The Imperium of Man has a word for everything that is not human: Xenos, alien, other. The word is a weapon. It flattens 12 distinct civilizations, each one with its own history, its own technology, its own philosophy of existence, into a single syllable of contempt. Here is every Xenos variant in Warhammer 40k explained. Let's break this down. Vespid. Insectoid flyers from the world of Vespid in the Toe Empire's sphere of influence. The Vespid stingwings are one of the Toe's most effective auxiliary species. Fast, agile, and equipped with neutron blasters powered by crystals that grow naturally on their homeworld. In flight, they operate with a coordination that suggests hive mind communication, swooping through enemy formations and delivering precision strikes before withdrawing at speeds that most ground-based troops cannot track. The Toe integrated the Vespid into their military structure under the doctrine of the greater good. And the Vespid comply with a willingness that the wider 40k community finds suspicious. The suspicion centers on the communion helms, translation devices the Tau provide to Vespid strain leaders that allegedly allow communication between the two species. Without the helms, Vespid and Tau cannot understand each other. With the helms, the Vespid are cooperative, compliant, and eager to serve. The implication that the lore has never confirmed or denied is that the communion helms are not just translating, they may be influencing. The Vespid's enthusiastic integration into the Tau military may not be voluntary at all, but the product of subtle neurological manipulation delivered through a device they cannot refuse, because refusing would mean losing the ability to communicate with their allies entirely. The Tau Empire presents itself as the galaxy's most enlightened faction. The Vespid helmets are the crack in that presentation that the lore keeps pointing at without ever fully opening. Subscribe and drop a comment telling us which Xenos faction you find the most interesting. Let us keep going. Kroot. They are what they eat, literally. The Kroot are a species of avian-descended predators native to the world of Petch, whose defining biological trait is active adaptive evolution through consumption. When a Kroot eats the flesh of another species, their genome absorbs useful genetic traits from the consumed organism. Eat enough of a particular species, and the Kroot physically changes. Muscle density increases if the prey was strong. Sensory organs sharpen if the prey had enhanced perception. Skin thickens if the prey was armored. The Kroot Shapers, the leaders of each kindred, direct what the group eats and what it avoids, functioning as genetic curators who guide their kindred's evolution through selective consumption. Eat the wrong species and the kindred devolves. Eat the right one and it gains capabilities no genetic engineering could replicate. The Kroot serve the Tiro Empire as mercenary auxiliaries, but their loyalty is transactional. They fight for the Toe because the Tiro pay them in the currency the Kroot value most, access to new species to consume. The greater good is not their philosophy. Dinner is. Kroot carnivores form the backbone of the auxiliary infantry. Kroot hounds are devolved kindreds that consumed too many bestial species and lost their sapience. Krootoks are massive Kroot who consumed too many large herbivores and became living siege platforms. The Great Narlock is the largest Kroot variant, a towering predator used as a living battering ram. The Kroot are the galaxy's most practical species. They do not build empires or worship gods or debate philosophy. They eat what makes them stronger and avoid what makes them weaker, and 10,000 years of galactic war has provided them an all-you-can-eat buffet. Leagues of Votann. The squats came back and they brought grudges. The Leagues of Votann are a civilization of abhuman clones, descended from human colonists who settled the galactic core during the Age of Technology, tens of thousands of years before the Imperium existed. They are short, stocky, engineered for high-gravity environments, and culturally built around the veneration of their ancestor cores. Massive, ancient artificial intelligences that contain the accumulated knowledge and genetic templates of every kin who has ever lived. The ancestor cores are the League's most important and most dangerous asset. They are old. Older than the Imperium. Older than most functioning technology in the galaxy, and they are degrading. The cores process information more slowly with each passing millennium, their responses becoming more delayed, their outputs becoming more erratic. The Leagues treat them with religious reverence, consulting them for strategic guidance, genetic planning, and cultural continuity, but the underlying reality is that the Leagues are a civilization built on computers that are slowly dying, and the kin do not have the technological knowledge to repair them because the knowledge needed to repair them is stored inside the cores themselves. The Leagues fight with graviton weapons, ion technology, and Hearthkin warriors clad in void armor. Their berserks charge into combat driven by chemically induced fury. Their Ironkin are robotic constructs treated as equals rather than tools. The Leagues returned to the tabletop in 2022 after decades of absence, and their reintroduction reframed the galaxy's power structure. The Imperium is not the only human-descended civilization. There is another one, older, better armed, and considerably less interested in the Emperor's opinion. Harlequins. Every battle is a performance, every death is a punchline. The Harlequins are an Aeldari sub-faction devoted to Sagarak, the Laughing God, the only Aeldari deity who survived the fall of the Eldar intact by hiding in the webway. While the Craftworld Aeldari mourn their empire's destruction, and the Drukhari drown their fear of Slaanesh in torture, the Harlequins dance. They are warriors, actors, historians, and priests simultaneously, performing ritual plays called mythic cycles that preserve Aeldari history through movement rather than text. They fight in troops organized into masks, each mask devoted to a different aspect of the Aeldari mythic cycle. The light mask performs stories of hope. The dark mask performs stories of terror. The twilight mask performs the ambiguous stories that contain both. In combat, Harlequins move with a speed and acrobatic precision that makes even other Aeldari look slow. They wear hollow suits that project kaleidoscopic light patterns across their bodies, disorienting enemies, and making the Harlequins nearly impossible to track. Their weapons include the Harlequin's Kiss, a device strapped to the wrist that fires a monofilament wire into an enemy's body and then retracts, liquefying everything inside the victim's torso. They travel the webway freely, moving between craft worlds, Commorragh, Exodite worlds, and Ynnari enclaves without faction restrictions because the Harlequins belong to none of them. They belong to the Laughing God, and the Laughing God's joke is the same one it has always been, that the Aeldari destroyed themselves, and the only response that makes sense is to keep performing the tragedy as a comedy until someone finally gets the punchline. Ynnari. The newest Aeldari faction, and the one that believes death can save the species. The Ynnari are followers of Ynnari, the Aeldari god of the dead, a deity that is still being born from the accumulated psychic energy of every Aeldari soul that has died since the fall. Yvraine, the emissary of Ynnari, is the faction's leader. A former Craftworld Aeldari, who was exiled, became a gladiator in Commorragh's arenas, died, and was resurrected by Ynnari's nascent power. She emerged from death carrying the Crone Sword, one of several artifacts needed to fully awaken the Death God, and began gathering followers from every Aeldari sub-faction. Craftworld Aeldari, Drukhari, Harlequins, Corsairs, the Ynnari draw from all of them because their message transcends faction boundaries. If Ynnari fully awakens, he will be powerful enough to destroy Slaanesh, the chaos god who devoured the Aeldari pantheon during the fall and who currently claims the soul of every Aeldari who dies without protection. The spirit stones that Craftworld Aeldari carry, the torture that Drukhari used to stave off Slaanesh's hunger, the infinity circuits that store souls after death, all of these are stopgaps. Ynnari is the permanent solution. The Ynnari's significance to the broader 40k narrative is enormous because they are the faction that resurrected Robauta Guilliman, working alongside Belisarius Cawl to heal the Primarch's poison wound and return him to the Imperium. An Aeldari faction saved the Imperium's greatest leader. The Imperium has not acknowledged this with anything resembling gratitude. Genestealer Cults. They look human. They pray like humans. They organize like humans. They are not human. Genestealer cults are Tyranid infiltration organisms that operate on a multi-generational timescale, embedding themselves in human populations decades or centuries before the Hive Fleet arrives. The cycle begins with a single Genestealer, a six-limbed predator that implants its genetic material into a human host through a process called the Genestealer's Kiss. The infected host does not die. They are psychically bonded to the Genestealer and compelled to protect it. They breed. Their children carry Genestealer DNA, hybrids who appear increasingly human with each subsequent generation but remain psychically linked to the patriarch. the original Genestealer who has grown into a massive, ancient creature that sits at the center of the cult like a spider at the center of a web. First-generation hybrids are monstrous, barely humanoid, with extra limbs and alien features. Second-generation hybrids are less obvious. Third-generation hybrids pass for human with minor abnormalities. Fourth-generation hybrids are indistinguishable from baseline humans and can infiltrate any institution, military, government, industrial, religious. The cult spreads through society like an infection, gaining members, accumulating resources, and worshipping the patriarch as a divine figure. When the cult is large enough and the Hive fleet is close enough, the cult rises. Armed insurrection, sabotaged defenses, planetary infrastructure disabled from within. The Hive fleet arrives to a world that has already been opened from the inside. The cult expects salvation. They expect their star gods to embrace them. The Hive fleet consumes everything on the planet, including the cult. The flock does not survive the answer to its prayer. Drukhari. The Dark Eldar, raiders who live in a city built inside the webway, the extra-dimensional tunnel network that connects points across the galaxy. Komarog is their home, a sprawling, impossible metropolis that exists between dimensions, hidden from the Chaos Gods, powered by stolen suns, and governed by nothing except the absolute certainty that the strong take what they want from the weak. The Drukhari are Aeldari who, after the fall, refused the austerity that the craft world Aeldari adopted. They did not limit their emotions. They did not wear spirit stones. They did not mourn the empire they had destroyed through excess. They doubled down. The Drukhari raid real space for captives. They torture them. They inflict pain with a creativity and duration that defies the capacity of most species to comprehend, because pain is not entertainment for the Drukhari. It is food. When the Aeldari Empire fell and Slaanesh was born, the Chaos God began slowly consuming every Aeldari soul in the galaxy. The Drukhari discovered that inflicting suffering on others slows Slaanesh's consumption of their own souls. Pain sustained them. Torture became a biological imperative rather than a cultural choice. Every scream extends a Drukhari's life. Every captive is a battery. The Cabals are the military organizations that conduct the raids. The witch cults are the gladiatorial arenas where captives are killed for sport and the audience feeds on the spectacle. The homunculi are the flesh sculptors, the Drukhari's closest equivalent to scientists who can resurrect the dead, reshape bodies, and create pain on a scale that no natural biology could produce. The Drukhari are the Aeldari who decided that the fall was not a tragedy. It was a permission slip. Aeldari. The Dying Empire. The craft world Aeldari are the remnants of the most powerful civilization the galaxy has ever known, a species whose psychic might once rivaled the old ones and whose empire spanned the galaxy for millions of years before they destroyed it through a collective descent into excess so extreme that it birthed a god of pleasure and pain. Slaanesh, the prince of excess, born from the psychic overflow of an entire species that could not stop pursuing sensation. The fall killed billions of Aeldari in an instant. Their empire's core worlds were consumed by the Eye of Terror, a permanent wound in reality where the warp bleeds into real space. The survivors fled on craft worlds, planet-sized spacecraft that had served as trading vessels and cultural centers before the fall, and became arcs of survival after it. The craft world Aeldari live in structured, disciplined societies built around the path system, a framework that channels each Aeldari's psychic energy into a specific discipline to prevent the emotional excess that created Slaanesh. The Path of the Warrior produces aspect warriors, specialized fighters devoted to a single aspect of Cain, the Aeldari god of war. The Path of the Seer produces warlocks and farseers, psychers who guide the craft world through precognitive visions. When a craft world Aeldari dies, their soul is captured by a spirit stone and transferred to the craft world's infinity circuit, a collective psychic network that prevents Slaanesh from consuming them. Without the spirit stone, the soul goes directly to Slaanesh. Every Aeldari walks through life knowing that the god they created is waiting for them at the end, and the only thing standing between their consciousness and eternal torment is a gem around their neck. Tau Empire. The youngest major civilization in the galaxy, and the only one that still believes in progress. The Tau emerged from their homeworld of Tau roughly 6,000 standard years ago, a blink in galactic time, and have been expanding ever since under the banner of the greater good. A philosophical doctrine that holds that all sentient species can coexist in mutual benefit if they subordinate individual desire to collective welfare. The Toh do not worship gods, they do not fear the warp. They have almost no psychic presence, which makes them effectively invisible to demons, but also means they have no psychers, no warp travel capability of their own, and no understanding of chaos as anything other than a tactical problem. Their technology is the most advanced conventional technology in the galaxy. Battlesuits piloted by Firecast warriors, the Riptide, the Broadside, the Crisis Suit, deliver firepower that rivals Space Marine heavy weapons platforms. Their doctrine is range warfare. They do not charge. They do not engage in melee if they can avoid it. They shoot, reposition, and shoot again, maintaining distance between themselves and the enemy with a disciplined precision that makes their forces disproportionately lethal relative to their size. The Teoh Empire is small. Compared to the Imperium, it is a speck. Compared to the Orks, it is a footnote. But the Toh are growing, and their rate of expansion, driven by optimism and efficiency rather than religious fervor or genetic compulsion, has drawn the attention of every major power in the galaxy. The Imperium considers them a minor threat. The Necrons consider them an irrelevance. The Tyranids consider them biomass. The Teoh consider themselves the future, and the tragedy of the Toh Empire is that the galaxy has a way of teaching optimists what the word Grimdark means. Orks. They are the most successful species in the galaxy, and they are having the time of their lives. Orks are a fungal organism. They reproduce through spores, released from their bodies throughout their lives and upon death. Kill an orc and its spores seed the ground, growing into new orcs within weeks. You cannot exterminate them, you cannot outlast them, you cannot starve them, because they eat anything, including each other. The orcs were engineered by the Old Ones during the War in Heaven 60 million years ago as a biological weapon against the Necrons, and the engineering was brutally effective. Every orc is born with an instinctive understanding of violence, a genetic compulsion toward combat, and a psychic field called the Waaagh that strengthens as more orcs gather in one place. The Waaagh field is the orcs' most dangerous attribute because it makes their beliefs functionally real. If enough orcs believe a vehicle should go faster, the Waaagh field makes it go faster. If enough orcs believe a gun should fire, the Waaagh field makes it fire even if the engineering does not support it. Orc technology should not work. It does because they believe it does, and their collective psychic field bridges the gap between mechanical impossibility and operational reality. Orc society is organized around size. The biggest orc leads. If a bigger orc shows up, that one leads instead. The hierarchy is resolved through violence, which the orcs consider a feature rather than a problem. War bosses command wars, massive invasions that sweep across sectors and consume everything in their path. The Beast, the largest orc ever recorded, nearly destroyed the Imperium during the War of the Beast in M32. Gazgul Meg Uruk Thraka, the current dominant war boss, has launched multiple Waaghs against Armageddon and is currently the single greatest orc threat in the galaxy. The orcs do not have a philosophy. They do not have a religion. They have a purpose, and the purpose is fighting, and they pursue it with a joy that no other species in the galaxy can match. Necrons. 60 million years ago, the Necrontyr were a mortal species cursed with short, cancer-ridden lives on a radiation-blasted homeworld. They waged war against the Old Ones, the ancient architects of the galaxy's psychic species, and lost. In desperation, the Necrontyr made a bargain with the C'tan, the Star Gods, ancient energy beings of immense power. The C'tan offered the Necrontyr immortality. The price was biotransference, the transfer of every Necrontyr consciousness into a metal body. The process worked. The Necrontyr became the Necrons, deathless, tireless, indestructible. The process also stripped them of their souls. Their emotions dulled, their creativity faded, their individuality eroded. The lords and overlords retained their personalities. The warriors became automatons. The C'tan fed on the soul energy released during the transfer and grew stronger. The Necrons, now realizing they had been used, turned on the C'tan and shattered them into shards, imprisoning the fragments in tesseract labyrinths. Then they went to sleep. 60 million years of dormancy and tomb worlds scattered across the galaxy, waiting for the younger species to exhaust themselves before the Necrons reclaimed what they had always considered theirs. They are waking up now. Their technology is the most advanced in the galaxy. Gauss weaponry strips matter apart at the molecular level. Their bodies regenerate from damage that would destroy any other material. Their monoliths phase through dimensions. Their dynasties are ruled by overlords and pharaons who remember a time before humanity existed and consider the current state of the galaxy an infestation on their property. The Necrons do not want to conquer the galaxy. They want it back. They owned it first. Everything that has happened since, the Aeldari Empire, the War in Heaven, the rise of humanity, the Horus Heresy, the Imperium, is, from the Necron perspective, something that happened on their lawn while they were asleep. Tyranids. They are not from this galaxy. They are not from any galaxy the Imperium has mapped. The Tyranids are an extragalactic species of bioorganisms that travel between galaxies in massive hive fleets, each one a self-contained ecosystem of billions of creatures operating under the psychic direction of the Hive Mind, a collective consciousness so vast that its shadow in the warp blocks out the Astronomicon and silences psychic communication across entire sectors. The Tyranids do not conquer worlds, they consume them, every organism, every plant, every drop of water, every mineral. Every atom of usable biomass is stripped from the planet's surface, processed through digestion pools, and absorbed into the hive fleet's biology. When a hive fleet has finished with a world, the world is a sterile rock. Nothing lives. Nothing grows. The atmosphere is gone. The oceans are gone. The soil is gone. What remains is a dead sphere that will never support life again. Hive Fleet Behemoth struck the Ultramarines realm and was defeated at the Battle of Waaagh, but the cost was the near destruction of the Ultramarines' first company. Hive Fleet Kraken attacked on a broader front, splitting into tendrils that overwhelmed multiple sectors simultaneously. Hive Fleet Leviathan is the largest hive fleet yet encountered, attacking from below the galactic plane in a vector that no Imperial defense network was designed to cover. The terrifying truth the Imperium has not fully processed is that the hive fleets encountered so far may be scouting forces. The main body of the Tyranid species may still be in the void between galaxies, and what the Imperium has fought for the last several centuries may be the equivalent of the fingers of a hand reaching into a jar to test what is inside before the fist closes. The Tyranids are not a faction. They are a weather system. They are a geological event. They are the galaxy's immune response in reverse, not the body attacking an infection, but the infection arriving to consume the body. Every other Xenos on this list wants something from the galaxy. Territory, revenge, survival, souls, fun. The Tyranids want the galaxy itself measured in calories. And the question the setting has been asking since their introduction is not whether they can be stopped. It is whether stopping them is even a concept that applies to something that has already consumed everything else in its path and is still hungry.